Hangover by John D. MacDonald. He dreamed that he had dropped something, lost something of value in the furnace, and he lay on his side trying to look down at an angle through a little hole, look beyond the flame down into the dark guts of the furnace for what he had lost. But the flame kept pulsing through the hole with a brightness that hurt his eyes, with a heat that parched his face, pulsing with an intermittent, husky, rasping sound. With his awakening, the dream became painfully explicable. The pulsing roar was his own harsh breathing. The parched feeling was a consuming thirst. The brightness was transmuted into pain, intensely localized behind his eyes. When he opened his eyes, a long slant of early morning sun dazzled him, and he shut his eyes quickly again. This was a morning time of awareness of discomfort, so acute that he had no thought for anything beyond the appraisal of the body and its functions. Though he was dimly aware of psychic discomforts that might later exceed the anguish of the flesh, the immediacy of bodily pain localized his attentions. Even without the horizontal brightness of the sun, he would have known it was early. Long sleep would have muted the beat of the taxed heart to a softened, sedate, and comfortable rhythm. But it was early, and the heart knocked sharply with a violence and in a cadence almost hysterical, so that no matter how he turned his head he could feel it, a tack hammer chipping away at his mortality. His thirst was monstrous, undiminished by the random nausea that teased at the back of his throat. His hands and feet were cool, yet where his thighs touched he was sweaty. His body felt clotted, and he knew that he had perspired heavily during the evening, an oily perspiration that left an unpleasant residue when it dried. The pain behind his eyes was a slow, bulging and shrinking in contrapuntal rhythm to the clatter of his heart. He sat on the edge of the bed, head bowed, eyes squeezed shut, cool, trembling fingers resting on his bare knees. He felt weak, nauseated, and acutely depressed. This was the great joke. This was a hangover thing of sly wink of rueful guffaw. This was death in the morning. He stood on shaky legs and walked into the bathroom. He turned the cold water on as far as it would go. He drank a full glass greedily. He was refilling the glass when the first spasm came. He turned to the toilet, half falling, cracking one knee painfully on the tile floor, and knelt there and clutched the edge of the bowl in both hands, hunched, miserable, naked. The water ran in the sink for a long time while he remained there retching, until nothing more came but flakes of greenish bile. When he stood up, he felt weaker but slightly better. He mopped his face with a damp towel, then drank more water, drank it slowly and carefully and in great quantity, losing track of the number of glasses. He drank the cold water until his belly was swollen and he could hold no more, but he felt as thirsty as before. Putting the glass back on the rack, he looked at himself in the mirror. He took a quick, overly casual look, the way one glances at a stranger, the eye returning for a longer look after it is seen that the first glance aroused no undue curiosity. Though his face was grayish, eyes slightly puffy, jaws soiled by beard stubble, the long face with its even, undistinguished features looked curiously unmarked in relation to the torment of the body. The visual reflection was a first step in the reformation of identity. You are Hadley Purvis. You are 39. Your hair is turning grey with astonishing and disheartening speed. He turned his back on the bland image on the face that refused to comprehend his pain. He leaned his buttocks against the chill edge of the sink, and a sudden, unbidden image came into his mind, as clear and supernaturally perfect as a coloured advertisement. It was a shot glass full to the very brim with dark brown bourbon by a slow effort of will. He caused the image to fade away. Not yet, he thought, and immediately wondered about his instinctive choice of mental phrase. Nonsense. This was a part of the usual morbidity of hangover, to imagine oneself slowly turning into an alcoholic. The rum sour on Sunday mornings had become a ritual with him, condoned by Sarah, and that certainly did not speak of alcoholism. Today was, unhappily, a working day, and it would be 12:30 before the first martini at Mario's. If anyone had any worries about alcoholism, it was Sarah, and her worries resulted from her lack of knowledge of his job and its requirements. After a man has been drinking for 21 years, he does not suddenly become a legitimate cause for the sort of annoying concern Sarah had been showing lately. In the evening, when they were alone before dinner, they would drink, and that certainly did not distress her. She liked her few knocks as well as anyone. Then she had learned somehow that whenever he went to the kitchen to refill their glasses from the martini jug in the deep freeze, he would have an extra one for himself, opening his throat for it, pouring it down in one smooth, long, silvery gush. By mildness of tone, she had trapped him into an admission, then had told him that the very secrecy of it was significant. He had tried to explain that his tolerance for alcohol was greater than hers, and that it was easier to do it that way than to listen to her tiresome hints about how many he was having. Standing there in the bathroom, he could hear the early morning sounds of the city. His hearing seemed unnaturally keen. He realized that it was absurd to stand there and conduct mental arguments with Sarah and become annoyed at her. He reached into the shower stall and turned the faucets and waited until the water was the right temperature before stepping in. Just barely warm. He made no attempt at first to bathe. He stood under the roar and thrust of the high nozzle, eyes shut, face tilted up. As he stood there, he began cautiously to think of the previous evening. He had much experience in this sort of reconstruction. He reached out with memory timorously, anticipating remorse and self-disgust. The first part of the evening was, as always, easy to remember. It had been an important evening. He had dressed carefully yesterday morning, knowing that there would not be time to come home and change before going directly from the OC to the hotel for the meeting with its cocktails, dinner, speeches, movie, and unveiling of the new model. Because of the importance of the evening, he had taken it very easy at Mario's at lunchtime, limiting himself to 2 martinis before lunch, conscious of virtue, only to have it spoiled by Bill Hunter's coming into his OC at 3 in the afternoon, staring at him with both relief and approval, and saying, "Glad you didn't have one of those 3-hour lunches, Had. The old man was a little dubious about your joining the group tonight." Hadley Purvis had felt suddenly and enormously annoyed. Usually he liked Bill Hunter despite his aura of opportunism, despite the cautious ambition that had enabled Hunter to become quite close to the head of the agency in a very short time. "And so you said to him, 'Mr. Driscoll, if Had Purvis can't go to the party, I won't go either.'" And then he broke down. He watched Bill Hunter flush. "Not like that, Had. But I'll tell you what happened. He asked me if I thought you would behave yourself tonight. I said I was certain you realized the importance of the occasion, and I reminded him that the Detroit people know you and like the work you did on the spring campaign. So, if you get out of line, it isn't going to do me any good either. And that's your primary consideration, naturally." Hunter looked at him angrily, helplessly. "Damn it, Had. Keep your little heart from fluttering. I'll step lightly." Bill Hunter left his OC. After he was gone, Hadley tried very hard to believe that it had been an amusing little interlude, but he could not. Resentment stayed with him, resentment at being treated like a child, and he suspected that Hunter had brought it up with Driscoll, saying very casually, "Hope Purvis doesn't put on a floor show tonight." It wasn't like the old man to have brought it up. He felt that the old man genuinely liked him. They'd had some laughs together. Grown-up laughs, a little beyond the capacity of a Boy Scout like Hunter. He had washed up at 5, then gone down and shared a cab with Davy Tidmarsh, the only one of the new kids who had been asked to come along. Davy was all hopped up about it. He was a nice kid. Hadley liked him. Davy demanded to know what it would be like, and in the cab Hadley told him, "We'll be seriously outnumbered. There'll be a battalion from Detroit, also the bank people. It'll be done with enormous seriousness and a lot of expense. This is a pre-preview. Maybe they'll have a mock-up there. The idea is that they get us all steamed up about the new model, then, all enthused, we whip up 2 big promotions. The first promotion is a carnival deal they will use to sell the new models to the dealers and get them all steamed up. That'll be about 4 months from now. The second promotion will be the campaign to sell the cars to the public. They'll make a big fetish of secrecy, Davy. They'll be uniformed company guards. Armed, it was, as he had anticipated, only a bit bigger and gaudier than last year. Everything seemed to get bigger and gaudier every year. It was on the top floor of the hotel, in one of the middle-sized convention rooms. They were carefully checked at the door, and each was given a numbered badge to wear. On the left side of the room was 60 feet of bar. Along the right wall was the table where the buffet would be. There was a busy rumble of male conversation, a blue haze of smoke. Hadley nodded and smiled at the people he knew as they worked their way toward the bar. With drink in hand, he went into the next room, after being checked again at the door to look at the mock-up. Hadley had to admit that it had been done very neatly. The mock-up was 1/3 actual size. It revolved slowly on a chest-high pedestal, a red and white convertible with the door open, with the model of a girl in a swimming suit standing beside it. Both model girl and model car bathed in an excellent imitation of sunlight. He looked at the girl first, marveling at how cleverly the sheen of suntan girl had been duplicated. He looked at the mannequin's figure and thought at once of Sarah, and felt a warm wave of tenderness for her, a feeling that she was his luck, and, with her, nothing could ever go wrong. He looked at the lines of the revolving car, and, with the glibness of long practice, he made up phrases that would be suitable for advertising it. He stood aside for a time and watched the manufactured delight on the faces of those who were seeing the model for the first time. He finished his drink and went out to the bar. With the first drink, the last traces of irritation at Bill Hunter disappeared. As soon as he had a fresh drink, he looked Bill up and said, "I am the man who snarled this afternoon." "No harm done," Hunter said promptly and a bit distantly. "Excuse me, had tea. Here is somebody over there I have to say hello to." Hadley placed himself at the bar. He was not alone long. Within 10 minutes, he was the center of a group of 6 or 7. He relished these times when he was sought out for his entertainment value. The drinks brought him quickly to the point where he was, without effort. Amusing, the sharp phrases came quickly, almost without thought. They laughed with him and appreciated him. He felt warm and loved. He remembered there had been small warnings in the back of his mind, but he had ignored them. He would know when to stop. He told the story about Timmy and Tacky and the punch card over at Shaw's, and knew he told it well, and knew he was having a fine time, and knew that everything was beautifully under control. But beyond that point, memory was faulty. It lost continuity, it became episodic, each scene bright enough, yet separated from other scenes by a grayness he could not penetrate. He was still at the bar. The audience had dwindled to 1, a small man he didn't know, a man who swayed and clung to the edge of the bar. He was trying to make the small man understand something. He kept shaking his head. Hunter came over to him and took his arm and said, "Had, you've got to get something to eat. They're going to take the buffet away soon. Smile, partner, when you use that word, got. Sit down and I'll get you a plate." Never let it be said that Hadley Purvis couldn't cut his own way through a solid wall of buffet. As Hunter tugged at his arm, Hadley finished his drink, put the glass on the bar with great care, and walked over toward the buffet, shrugging his arm free of Hunter's grasp. He took a plate and looked at all the food. He had not the slightest desire for food. He looked back. Hunter was watching him. He shrugged and went down the long table den. Another memory, standing there with plate in hand. Looking over and seeing Bill Hunter's frantic signals, ignoring him, and walking steadily over to where Driscoll sat with some of the top brass from Detroit. He was amused at the apprehensive expression on Driscoll's face, but he sat down and Driscoll had to introduce him. Then later, dropping something from his fork, recapturing it, and glancing up to trap a look of distaste on the face of the most important man from Detroit, a bald, powerful-looking man with a ruddy face and small, bright blue eyes. He remembered that he started brooding about that look of distaste. The others talked, and he ate doggedly. "They think I am a clown. I am good enough to keep them laughing, but that's all. They don't think I am capable of deep thought." He remembered Driscoll's frown when he broke into the conversation, addressing himself to the bald one from Detroit and taking care to pronounce each word distinctly, without slur. That's a nice-looking mock-up, and it is going to make a lot of vehicles look old before their time. The way I see it, we're in a period of artificially accelerated obsolescence. The honesty has gone out of the American product. The great God is turnover, so all you manufacturers are straining a gut to make a product that wears out or breaks or doesn't last or, like your car, goes out of style. It's the old game of rooking the consumer. You have your hand in his pocket, and we have our hand in yours. He remembered his little speech vividly, and it shocked him. Maybe it was true, but that had not been the time or place to state it. Not at this festive meeting, where everybody congratulated each other on what a fine new sparkling product they would be selling. He felt his cheeks grow hot as he remembered his own words. What a thing to say in front of Driscoll! The most abject apologies were going to be in order. He could not remember the reaction of the man from Detroit or Driscoll's immediate reaction. He had no further memories of being at the table. The next episode was back at the bar, a glass in his hand, Hunter beside him, speaking so earnestly, you could almost see the tears in his eyes. Good Lord, Had, what did you say? What did you do? I've never seen him so upset. Tell him to go do something unspeakable. I just gave them a few clear words of ultimate truth. And now I intend to put some sparkle in that little combo. Leave the music alone. Go home, please. Just go home, Had. There was another gap, and then he was arguing with the drummer. The man was curiously disinclined to give up the drums. A weight had ripped his arm. What's your trouble? Hadley asked him angrily. I just want to teach this clown how to stay on top of the beat. A gentleman wants to see you, sir. He is by the cloakroom. He asked me to bring you out. Then he was by the cloakroom. Driscoll was there. He stood close to Hadley. Don't open your mouth, Purvis. Just listen carefully to me while I try to get something through your drunken skull. Can you understand what I am saying? Certainly I can. Shut up. He may have lost the whole shooting match for us, that speech of yours. He told me he wasn't aware of the fact that I hired commies. He said that criticisms of the American way of life make him physically ill. What I'm going back in and tell him, no, that I got you out here and fired you and sent you home. Get this straight. It's an attempt to save the contract. Even if it weren't, I'd still fire you and I'd do it in person. I thought I would dread it. I've known you a long time, I find out, Purvis, that I am actually enjoying it. It's such a damn relief to get rid of you. Don't open your mouth. I wouldn't take you back if you worked for free. Don't come back. Don't come in tomorrow. I'll have a girl pack your personal stuff. I'll have it sent to you by messenger along with your check. You'll get both tomorrow before noon. You're a clever man, Purvis, but the town is full of clever men who can hold liquor. Goodbye. Driscoll turned on his heel and went back into the big room. Hadley remembered that the shock had penetrated the haze of liquor. He remembered that he had stood there and he had been able to see two men setting up a projector, and all he could think about was how he would tell Sarah and what she would probably say. And, without transition, he was in the Times Square area on his way home. The sidewalk would tilt unexpectedly, and each time he would take a lurching step to regain his balance. The glare of the lights hurt his eyes. His heart pounded. He felt short of breath. He stopped and looked in the window of a men's shop that was still open. The sign on the door said, "Open until midnight." He looked at his watch. It was a little after 11. He had imagined it to be much later. Suddenly, it became imperative to him to prove both to himself and to a stranger that he was not at all drunk. If he could prove that, then he would know that Driscoll had fired him not for drinking, but for his opinions. And would anyone want to keep a job where he was not permitted to have opinions? He gathered all his forces and looked intently into the shop window. He looked at a necktie. It was a grey wool tie with a tiny figure, embroidered in dark red. The little embroidered things were shaped like commas. He decided that he liked it very much. The ties in that corner of the window were priced at $3.50. He measured his stability, cleared his throat, and went into the shop. "Good evening. I'd like that tie in the window, the grey one on the left with the dark red pattern. Would you please show me which one, sir?" "Of course." Hadley pointed it out. The man took a duplicate off a rack. "Would you like this in a box, or shall I put it in a bag?" "A bag is all right." "It's a very handsome tie." He gave the man a $5 bill. The man brought him his change. "Thank you, sir. Good night." "Good night." He walked out steadily, carrying the bag. No one could have done it better, a very orderly purchase. If he ever needed proof of his condition, the clerk would remember him. "Yes, I remember the gentleman." He came in shortly before closing time. He bought a grey tie. Sober, perhaps he'd had a drink or two, but he was as sober as a judge. And somewhere between the shop and home, all memory ceased. There was a vague something about a quarrel with Sarah, but it was not at all clear. Perhaps because the homecoming scene had become too frequent for them. He dried himself vigorously on a harsh towel and went into the bedroom. When he thought of the lost job, he felt quick panic. Another one wouldn't be easy to find. One just as good might be impossible. It was a profession that fed on gossip. Maybe it was a good thing. It would force a change on them. Maybe a new city, a new way of life. Maybe they could regain something that they had lost in the last year or so. But he knew he whistled in the dark. He was afraid this was the worst of all mornings after, yet even that realization was diffused by the peculiar aroma of unreality that clung to all his hangover mornings. Dreams were always vivid, so vivid that they became confused with reality. With care he studied the texture of the memory of Driscoll's face and found therein a lessening of his hope that it could have been dreamed. He went into his bedroom and took fresh underwear from the drawer. He found himself thinking about the purchase of the necktie again. It seemed strange that the purchase should have such retroactive importance. The clothing he had worn was where he had dropped it beside his bed. He picked it up. He emptied the pockets of the suit. He emptied the pockets of the suit. There was a skein of dried vomit on the lapel of the suit. He could not remember having been ill. There was a triangular tear in the left knee of the trousers, and he noticed for the first time an abrasion on his bare knee. He could not remember having fallen. The necktie was not in the suit pocket. He began to wonder whether he had dreamed about the necktie. In the back of his mind was a ghost image of some other dream about a necktie. He decided that he would go to the AO. He did not see what else he could do if his memory of what Driscoll had said was accurate. Maybe by now Driscoll would have relented. When he went to select a necktie after he had shaved carefully, he looked for the new one on the rack. It was not there. As he was tying the one he had selected, he noticed a wadded piece of paper on the floor beside his wastebasket. He picked it up, spread it open, read the name of the shop on it, and knew that the purchase of the tie had been real. By the time he was completely dressed, it still was not 8 o'clock. He felt unwell, though the sharpness of the headache was dulled. His hands were shaky. His legs felt empty and weak. It was time to face Sarah. He knew that he had seen her the previous evening. Probably she had been in bed, had heard him come in, had gotten up, as was her custom, and, no doubt, there had been a scene. He hoped he had not told her of losing the job, yet, if it had been a dream, he could not have told her. If he had told her, it would be proof that it had not been a dream. He went through the bathroom into her bedroom, moving quietly. Her bed had been slept in, turned back where she had gotten out. He went down the short hall to the small kitchen. Sarah was not there. He began to wonder about her. Surely the quarrel could not have been so bad that she had dressed and left. He measured coffee into the top of the percolator and put it over a low gas flame. He mixed frozen juice and drank a large glass. The apartment seemed uncannily quiet. He poured another glass, drank half of it, and walked up the hallway to the living room. Stopping in the doorway, he saw the necktie, recognized a small pattern. He stood there, glass in hand, and looked at the tie. It was tightly knotted, and above the knot, resting on the arm of the chair, was the still, unspeakable face of Sarah. a face the shiny hue of fresh eggplant. End of Hangover by John D. MacDonald.